Hello, this is Mel Thompson, and this is a podcast in a series of podcasts about political risk. Today I'll be discussing the apparel industry, clothing, in other words, but clothing that is from South Asia. What do rising manufacturing costs in China and clothing have in common? The answer is South Asia. The geographic area encompassing Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, the Maldives, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka is in a good position to create millions of jobs in the apparel industry. This area, known as South Asia, is going to be quite the hub for the manufacturing and export of clothing. Lower cost and a very young workforce have made the potential for this area to be a good place for foreign direct investors looking to get into the apparel markets. Now, where does this good news create a political risk for foreign direct investors? The answer can be found in the East Asian nations of China, Hong Kong, Macau, Japan, North Korea, South Korea, Mongolia, and Taiwan. Now, if you take out North Korea from that list as a foreign direct investor from the United States, then the other countries are places where you can be involved. But for the sake of having a complete list, I did include North Korea in there. Having said that, if you look at South Asian nations, the increase in growth in apparel manufacturing, and then you take a look at the East Asian nations minus North Korea and how the potential for market entry to be limited so they can actually maintain their advantage, you can see a political risk developing. In other words, if you understand that the East Asian nations have a good reason to try to control the lack of exports that they now dominate being lower because of the better deals and the better opportunities that a lower production cost, a younger workforce creates in South Asian countries. The South Asian countries have a much less problematic export potential because they are not going to have to spend as much and can actually make more. Foreign direct investors can actually get a higher rate on return because the cost is going to be lower and the workforce is going to be a little bit more robust. So much so as compared to some of the East Asian nations that those East Asian nations, as I mentioned, may start taking certain steps to limit market entry, do something that would, shall we say, for lack of a better term, change or alter monetary policy in a way that would uh, somehow trigger fewer imports of South Asian apparel and somehow create a flood on the other end of East Asian apparel that they would hope would overtake the South Asian apparel. That type of situation could be problematic for foreign direct investors. And that can be problematic in two ways. First of all, those foreign direct investors who are involved in the South Asian countries would be hurt by this. Second of all, foreign direct investors who are involved in the East Asian countries would be scrambling to change their policies, their own internal policies, and as they pertain to political risk, how to mitigate that risk, because all of a sudden the rules of market entry potentially and monetary policy would have changed as a way to protect the economy of those countries. Any foreign direct investment in South Asian apparel manufacturing must be tempered with the thought that it could not be as large of a return as it has been in the past if you are also in East Asian countries. The same thought also must turn to the fact that it could be a very, very large return if the East Asian nations don't respond in a way that is going to, shall we say, temper the export potential of the South Asian countries. I fully expect that they will respond as a way to protect their own economy. So, therefore, if you're in both areas, both geographic regions, you're probably going to have a very good opportunity to earn. But you need to also understand that you have a much higher level of political risk in the East Asian countries because they're the ones that are going to be taking the actions to slow down exports and imports of South Asian apparel, not only into their country, but also into other markets globally where they are doing business. No single month or quarter is going to trigger an adverse response by East Asian nations. It will take at least 6 months of losses that can be traced directly back to South Asian growth. Foreign direct investors can track, and should have been tracking in the past, these types of developments. However, the fact that you now know, probably no doubt before you even heard me say this, means you can be proactive. And a proactive response to a political risk is always much better than waiting for a government policy that you hope would mitigate your political risk. This has been Mel Thompson.